Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I've been a long-haul trucker for almost 15 years now. I've driven every major highway in this country, seen things most people wouldn't believe, and heard stories that would keep you up at night. But nothing, and I mean nothing, compares to what happened to me on I-80 through Wyoming back in November of 2019. It was around 2 in the morning when I found myself pushing through the emptiest stretch of highway I'd ever seen. The kind of empty that makes you wonder if the rest of the world just disappeared while you weren't looking. Thick fog had rolled in about an hour earlier, the kind that presses against your windshield like something alive, like it's trying to get inside your cab with you. My wipers were working overtime, squeaking across the glass every few seconds, but they barely made a difference. The heater in my freight liner was struggling against the cold. I could feel the chill seeping through the doors, through the floorboards. My coffee had gone cold in the cup holder an hour ago, but I kept sipping it anyway, just to have something to do with my hands besides grip the steering wheel. I hadn't seen another vehicle in over 40 minutes. Not a single pair of headlights, not a single set of tail lights disappearing into the fog ahead of me. Just me, the road, and that suffocating gray mist that made it feel like I was driving through nothing, toward nothing. I kept my CB radio on, channel 19 like always. Most of the time it was just static and the occasional trucker checking in about road conditions or asking about a way station up ahead. But that night it had been silent for miles. Just that low, steady hum of white noise that becomes almost comforting when you're alone like that. Then the static broke. A voice came through. Male. Calm. Almost too calm. The kind of monotone that doesn't sound quite human, like someone reading from a script they don't understand. I can see your taillights. I glanced at my mirrors instinctively. Nothing. Just fog swallowing the road behind me, thick and impenetrable. No headlights, no glow of another vehicle anywhere in sight. I figured the transmission was meant for someone else, some other driver miles away on the same channel. I didn't respond, but then, a few minutes later, the voice came back. You're slowing down. My heart skipped, because I had just slowed down. There was a curve coming up, barely visible through the fog, and I'd eased off the gas to take it safe. I checked my mirrors again, craning my neck to see if maybe there was someone behind me I'd somehow missed. But there was nothing, just that endless gray void. My hands tightened on the wheel. I grabbed the CB receiver, my thumb hovering over the button. Finally, I pressed it. Who is this? Where are you? Static. Just static. No response. No explanation. I tried to shake it off. Told myself it was a coincidence. Maybe the guy could see someone else's taillights and was talking to them. Maybe he'd seen me slow down earlier and was just commenting on it now. But my pulse was racing, and I couldn't stop checking my mirrors every few seconds. I pushed the accelerator harder, trying to put distance between me and whoever, or whatever, was out there. The fog rushed past, and I kept my eyes locked on the yellow lines barely visible on the road ahead. 10 minutes passed. Silence on the CB, just the hum of my engine and the squeak of the wipers. Then the voice came back. You missed your exit. I froze. My foot almost slipped off the gas pedal, because 5 miles back I'd considered taking an exit to stop for gas. I'd seen the sign through the fog, thought about it for a few seconds, then decided to push on to the next town instead. It was a split-second decision, nothing I'd said out loud, nothing anyone could have known about, but he knew. Panic clawed up my throat. I grabbed the CB again, switching channels. Channel 17. Nothing. I switched again. Channel 21. Static. I kept flipping through, trying to get away from that voice. But then it came through again, cutting through every channel like it was following me. "Why are you running?" I could barely breathe. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the receiver. "I'm just trying to help you." "Who the hell are you?" I shouted into the CB, not caring if anyone else heard me. "Where are you?" Silence. Long, agonizing silence. I could hear my own breathing, harsh and ragged in the cab. The fog seemed thicker now, pressing in from all sides. I glanced at my speedometer. 80 miles an hour. Way too fast for these conditions, but I didn't care. I just needed to get away. Then the voice came back one more time. Quieter now. Almost a whisper. "Behind you. Always behind you." I slammed on the brakes. The truck lurched, tires skidding slightly on the damp asphalt, before the cab shuddered to a stop on the shoulder. I threw on my flashers, grabbed my flashlight, and jumped out into the fog. The cold hit me like a wall. Wind whipped around me, carrying moisture that soaked through my jacket in seconds. I stood there in the middle of the empty highway, shining my flashlight into the fog behind me. Nothing. No vehicles. No headlights. No sound except the wind and my own ragged breathing. I walked back along the road, my boots crunching on the gravel shoulder, sweeping the flashlight beam side to side. There was nothing. Absolutely nothing. Just fog and darkness, and the faint white lines of the road disappearing into the gray. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my heart hammering in my chest, waiting for something, anything, to appear. But it never did. Finally, I climbed back into my truck, hands still shaking. I sat there in silence for 5 full minutes, staring at the CB radio like it might come alive and start speaking on its own. I'd turned it off when I got out, and now I was terrified to turn it back on. But I needed to know. I needed to hear if that voice was still there. I flipped the switch. Dead static. No voices, no transmissions, just the empty hum of the channel. I put the truck in gear and started driving again. This time I pushed it to 80, then 85. I didn't care about the fog anymore. I just wanted to get to the next town, to see lights, to see people, to feel like I wasn't completely alone out there. 20 minutes later, I saw it. A rest stop, glowing like a beacon through the fog. I pulled in so fast I nearly fishtailed in the parking lot. There were a few other trucks there, and I'd never been so relieved to see another human being in my life. Inside, the fluorescent lights were harsh and bright, almost painful after driving through that darkness. There were a few other drivers inside, sitting at tables with coffee and vending machine snacks. I poured myself a cup, my hands still trembling, and sat down across from an older guy in a Peterbilt cap. I don't usually talk to other drivers about weird stuff. We all have our stories, and most of us keep them to ourselves. But I couldn't hold it in. "You ever hear anything strange on the CB out there?" I asked him. He looked up from his phone, and something in his expression changed. His face went pale. "You heard him too?" My stomach dropped. "What?" He leaned forward, his voice low. The voice, monotone, tells you things he shouldn't know. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. He rubbed his face, looking exhausted. "You're not the first. I've been driving this route for 20 years, and I've heard stories. Guys who've had the same thing happen on that stretch of I-80. Always at night, always in the fog. Some voice on the CB that knows things, sees things." "Who is it?" I whispered. He shook his head. "Nobody knows. Some guys think it's someone tracking truckers, using some kind of surveillance. Others think it's something else. Something that's always out there. Watching. Following." I felt sick. "Has anyone ever found out who it is?" "No," he said quietly. "And honestly, I don't think anyone wants to." I left that rest stop an hour later and finished my route. But I never drove that stretch of I-80 at night again. I changed my CB channels permanently, avoided Channel 19 on that highway altogether. But sometimes, late at night on other highways, when I'm alone and the road is empty, I'll hear static break on the CB. And then a familiar voice, flat and emotionless, will ask, "Where are you going?" I always turn the radio off now. Always check my mirrors. Because I don't know what was watching me that night in Wyoming. But I know it's still out there. Still following, still listening. And maybe, just maybe, it's following you too. If you're still with me after that first story, I appreciate it. These aren't easy things to talk about. But if you're enjoying this, leave a like or drop a comment. It helps more than you know. This next story happened to me about 3 years ago, and I still don't have an explanation for it. I've tried rationalizing it, tried convincing myself I was just tired or seeing things, but deep down, I know what I experienced was real. It was a brutally hot summer night in Texas, somewhere outside Amarillo, the kind of heat that doesn't quit even after the sun goes down. I'd been driving for almost 12 hours straight, and I was exhausted. My dispatcher had been riding me hard about a delivery deadline, and I'd pushed myself way past when I should have stopped. Around 3 in the morning, I pulled into a Flying J truck stop just off I-40. The parking lot was almost empty. Just a handful of big rigs scattered across the asphalt, their chrome reflecting the buzzing neon lights of the truck stop sign. The air was thick with humidity, and I could hear cicadas screaming from somewhere in the darkness beyond the lot. I parked my rig, killed the engine, and sat there for a moment, just breathing in the smell of diesel and hot asphalt. I planned to grab some food, fuel up, and maybe catch a few hours of sleep before hitting the road again. My CB was still on, crackling with occasional static. Most drivers were either asleep or off the channel at this hour. But then a voice came through, friendly and casual. "Hey driver, you at the Flying J?" I grabbed the receiver. "Yeah, just pulled in. You here too?" "Sure am," the voice said. It was a man's voice, warm and easygoing, the kind of voice you'd trust immediately. "Name's Dale. I'm parked on the other side of the lot. How's your night going?" I relaxed a little. Trucker small talk was normal, comforting even. "Long," I admitted. "Real long." "You?" "Same," Dale said with a chuckle. "Been running this road for years, but it never gets easier, does it?" We talked for a few minutes. Just casual stuff. Routes we'd driven, weather complaints, stories about annoying dispatchers. Dale mentioned he was driving a white Peterbilt, asked what I was running. I told him about my freight liner. Normal conversation. Then Dale said, "Hey, I'm gonna grab some coffee inside. You want to join me? Could use the company." I was tired, but the idea of a hot cup of coffee and some human interaction sounded good. "Yeah, sure. Give me a few minutes to fuel up, and I'll head in." "Sounds good, buddy. See you in there." I climbed out of my cab and walked over to the fuel pumps. The night air hit me like a wet blanket, and sweat immediately started soaking through my shirt. I fueled up, watching the numbers tick by on the pump, and glanced around the parking lot. That's when I realized something. I didn't see a white Peterbilt anywhere. I scanned the rows of trucks. There was a blue Freightliner, a red Kenworth, a couple of older Volvos, but no white Peterbilt. I figured maybe Dale was parked in the overflow area I couldn't see from where I stood. Maybe around the back of the building. I finished fueling and headed inside. The truck stop was exactly what you'd expect. Harsh fluorescent lights that made everything look washed out and sickly, a tired clerk behind the counter staring at his phone, a few vending machines humming in the corner. There were some tables near the coffee station, and one elderly driver was dozing in a corner booth. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down at one of the tables, facing the door so I could see when Dale came in. I waited. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. Nobody new entered. Just the clerk and the sleeping driver. I frowned and grabbed my CB handheld from my belt. "Hey, Dale, I'm inside. Where you at?" His voice came through immediately, clear and friendly. "I'm coming, just washing up. Be there in a sec." Another 10 minutes passed. Still no Dale. A knot of unease started forming in my stomach. I got back on the CB. "Dale, you still coming?" "I'm right here," he said. And now there was something slightly different about his voice. Flatter, less warm. "Dear, can you see me?" I looked around the nearly empty truck stop. Just the clerk. Just the sleeping driver. Nobody else. "Where exactly are you?" I asked, my hand gripping the CB receiver tighter. "At the table," Dale said, "right across from you." My blood ran cold. I was sitting alone. The chair across from me was empty. The entire table area was empty except for me. "This isn't funny," I said, my voice shaking. "Where are you, really?" There was a pause. Then Dale's voice came back, and this time it was completely flat, emotionless. "Look at the window." I turned slowly toward the large windows that faced the parking lot. It was dark outside, and with the bright lights inside, all I could see was my own reflection staring back at me. But then I saw something else. In the reflection, standing directly behind my chair, was a figure. It was indistinct, blurry around the edges, but it was there, wearing what looked like trucker clothes, jeans, a flannel shirt, a cap. But the face was pale and featureless, like looking at someone through frosted glass. I spun around so fast my chair tipped over. There was nothing behind me, just empty space. I looked back at the window. The figure was still there in the reflection, but now it was closer, leaning forward slightly, like it was trying to see my face. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. I stumbled backward and my chair clattered to the floor. The clerk looked up from his phone. "You all right, man?" I pointed at the window with a shaking hand. "Do you see that? Do you see that in the reflection?" He squinted at the window. "See what?" I looked again. The figure was still there, and now it tilted its head to the side in a way that made my skin crawl. Then Dale's voice came through the CB again, but this time it wasn't coming from the radio on my belt. It was coming from inside the building, from the speakers near the ceiling, from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Why'd you leave? I thought we were having coffee." I ran. I didn't even grab my coffee. I just bolted out of that building and sprinted across the parking lot to my truck. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely get the key in the door. I climbed inside, locked every door, and turned off my CB radio. But before the screen went dark, I saw one last transmission come through. "See you down the road." I started the engine and got the hell out of there. I didn't stop, didn't sleep. I drove straight through until I hit the next state, and even then I didn't feel safe. Later, after I'd calmed down enough to think straight, I started asking around. Talked to other truckers who ran that route regularly. Most of them brushed me off, but one older driver, a guy who'd been on the road for 30 years, he went quiet when I mentioned the Flying J outside Amarillo. "You talked to Dale?" he asked. "You know him?" The driver nodded slowly. "Yeah, or I know about him. Happened about 5 years ago. There was a trucker named Dale. Drove a white Peterbilt. Real friendly guy. Always on the CB. Always willing to talk to people. He had a heart attack right there in that parking lot. Middle of the night, just like when you were there. He was alone in his cab." My stomach turned. And nobody found him for 2 days. He died alone, waiting for someone to check on him. The driver looked at me with tired, sad eyes. Some of us figure he's still there. Still on the CB. Still looking for someone to talk to. Still waiting for that cup of coffee. I never stopped at that Flying J again. I don't care if I'm running on fumes. I drive past it every time. And sometimes Late at night when I'm on that stretch of I-40, I'll hear a voice on the CB. Friendly, warm, asking if I want to grab some coffee. I always drive past because I don't know if Dale understands that he's gone, and I don't want to be the one to find out what happens if I sit down across from him. This last story is different from the first two, because this time, the voice on my CB saved my life, and I still don't know who or what it really was. It happened in January of 2021. I was driving through Montana in the middle of a brutal winter storm. I should have pulled over hours earlier, should have found a safe place to wait it out, but I was trying to make a delivery deadline and I made the stupid decision to push through. The snow had started as light flurries around noon, but by the time the sun set, it had turned into a full-blown blizzard. Visibility was near zero. The road was barely distinguishable from the surrounding landscape, just a vague line of gray between walls of white. My wipers were working constantly, and ice was building up on the edges of my windshield faster than the defroster could melt it. I had chains on my tires, and I was crawling along at maybe 20 miles an hour, white-knuckling the steering wheel. The heater was blasting, but I could still feel the cold seeping in through every crack and seal. Wind howled around the cab, rocking it slightly with each gust. My CB was full of warnings, other truckers reporting jackknifed semis, whiteout conditions, roads closing. Smart drivers were pulling over anywhere they could find shelter, but I was committed. There was nowhere safe to stop on this stretch, just empty highway cutting through miles of nothing. That's when the voice came through. It was a woman's voice, urgent and clear despite the static. "Driver in the blue Volvo semi, you need to stop now." I jolted upright. I was driving a blue Volvo. My heart started racing. "Who is this?" I grabbed the CB receiver. "How do you know what I'm driving?" "There's a bridge out 2 miles ahead," the woman said, her voice desperate. "You won't see it until it's too late. Stop." I checked my GPS. It didn't show any bridge in the next few miles, but in these conditions, I couldn't trust anything. Visibility was so bad I wouldn't see a hazard until I was right on top of it. "Please," the woman's voice came again. "You have to listen to me. Pull over, now." There was something in her tone, genuine fear, genuine desperation that made me believe her. My instincts were screaming at me to trust her. I slowed down even more, bringing the truck to a crawl. My hazard lights were on, and I was barely moving forward, scanning the road ahead through the blinding snow. "How do you know about a bridge?" I asked into the CB. "Where are you?" "That doesn't matter," she said. "Just trust me. Stop the truck." And then I saw it, or almost didn't see it. The road just ended, dropped off into nothing. There were concrete barriers barely visible through the snow, covered in ice and snow, but they were there. The bridge was out, completely gone. If I'd been going highway speed, if I hadn't slowed down, I would have driven right off the edge. I slammed on the brakes. The truck slid, chains digging into the ice, and finally stopped maybe 30 feet from the drop-off. I sat there, hands shaking, heart pounding, staring at where the road disappeared into darkness. I grabbed the CB with trembling hands. "Oh my God, you were right. Thank you. How did you—" A different voice cut in. Male, gruff. Another trucker somewhere nearby. "Who are you talking to?" "The woman who warned me about the bridge," I said, still trying to catch my breath. "What woman?" the trucker said. "Nobody's been on this channel for 20 minutes except you." My blood turned to ice. She just spoke to me. She told me about the bridge. She saved my life. "Driver, I've had my CB on this channel the whole time," the trucker said slowly. "Nobody warned you about anything. You stopped on your own." I stared at the radio in disbelief. That couldn't be right. I'd heard her. She'd been so clear, so urgent. "Hello?" I called out on the CB. "Are you still there?" Silence. Just static and the howl of wind outside my cab. Eventually, highway patrol made it out to where I was stuck. They confirmed the bridge had washed out about 3 hours earlier in a flash flood from sudden snowmelt upstream. They'd been trying to get warnings out, but communication was spotty in the storm. I mentioned the woman on the CB to one of the officers. He got very quiet. "What did she sound like?" he asked. I described her voice, the urgency, the desperation, the way she sounded like she genuinely cared whether I lived or died. The officer exchanged a look with his partner. "You're not the first person to report this." He explained that 6 years ago, during a similar storm on this same stretch of highway, a woman trucker had tried to warn people about black ice over her CB. She was frantically trying to help other drivers avoid what she was seeing, but her truck hit a patch of that same black ice, and she went off the road. She died on impact. Her name was Sarah Mitchell, the officer said quietly. Drove this route for 15 years. Loved her job. Loved helping people. He paused. Every few years, during bad storms, we get reports. Drivers saying they heard a woman's voice on the CB, warning them about hazards, bridge collapses, ice patches, accidents ahead. The warnings are always accurate, always save lives. I sat there in silence, trying to process what he was telling me. "What happened to her?" I finally asked. "She was alone when she died," the officer said. "Radio call went out, but nobody got to her in time. They say she kept trying to warn people even as her truck was going over. Last thing anyone heard on the CB was her screaming for people to slow down." I felt tears prickling my eyes. "She saved my life." The officer nodded. "You're not the only one." They towed me back to the nearest town, and I waited until the storm cleared before continuing my route. But I never forgot Sarah Mitchell. I never forgot her voice on that CB, desperate and urgent, trying to save a stranger she'd never met. Now, sometimes during storms, I'll hear her again. A woman's voice cutting through the static, warning about a hazard ahead. I always listen. I always slow down. And I always say thank you, even though I know she probably can't hear me. I don't know if I believe in ghosts. I used to think all of this was just stories, things truckers made up to pass the time. But Sarah Mitchell saved my life that night in Montana. And according to that highway patrol officer, I'm not the first and I won't be the last. The CB radio connects all of us out here on the road, the living and the dead. And sometimes that connection is the only thing standing between you and disaster. I leave my CB on every night now, every single night, just in case someone out there needs help. Or just in case someone like Sarah is still trying to give it. So those are my 3 stories from the CB radio. 3 voices I'll never forget. One that terrified me, one that haunts me, and one that saved me. I still drive long haul, still keep my CB on. Because out here, in the dark, miles from anywhere, that radio is more than just a tool. It's a lifeline, a connection to something bigger than ourselves. Not all voices on the CB are what they seem. Some are warnings, some are threats. Some are echoes of people who never left the road. If you ever find yourself driving long haul, keep your CB on. Listen to the voices, because you never know what you might hear, or who might be trying to reach you. Thanks for listening. And if you made it through all 3 stories, leave a comment and let me know which one got under your skin the most. Stay safe out there.